The following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
We love it.
Good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. We just got back from our 3-day weekend. If you're new to the show, maybe you didn't realize we take the federal holidays off, and yesterday was President's Day, and in celebration of President's Day, I collected information on 11 of our 44 presidents who we know smoked pot. You can check that out on High Times magazine, online, hightimes.com. Look for the piece on 11 presidents who smoked pot. So check that out. And I hope you had a good 3-day weekend. We're back with plenty of news, interviews, information, and more for the cannabis community, including today, we're going to take a look at our Reformers Reader segment, and we're going to be covering a new book written by Barry Lyons. It's entitled Letter to a Prohibitionist. We'll have Barry on at past to discuss this book, Letter to a Prohibitionist. It's got some great reviews, including Jeffrey Myron from Harvard University, who said it was quite a good read. So check that out at past with author Barry Lyons. Then at 45 past, we'll have time for a good old-fashioned radical rant. There was an excellent piece on NBC News that chronicled Project Sam. It was entitled, is about Patrick Kennedy's anti-pot crusade, and it was entitled Treatment or Jail. Couldn't have summed it up better, but I'm going to take a deeper look at some of the quotes from Kennedy and Kevin Sabet that just left me speechless. Your blood will be boiling when you hear about today's radical rant. Also on the show today for our daily Toker Tunes, it's Electric Tuesday, so Electric Bob will be calling in with a song that has one of the longest titles we've ever played here on Electric Tuesday. Looking forward to that. Also, we've got a Behind the Headlines segment on some new research showing the promise of cannabinoids in the treatment and prevention of the spread of the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. There's some amazing research just in the past 2 or 3 years. We're going to go over that in Behind the Headlines. And of course, we'll start our show with the 420 radio news. There's all sorts of polls coming out on whether or not we should legalize medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. We're going to take a look at 3 of them in New York State, Arizona, and Minnesota. Also, some bad news out of the state of Iowa and the state of Washington with respect to medical marijuana. There's so much to cover that we'll take it into hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111 and cover even more cannabis news of the day. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show, and we'll be right back after we pay some bills.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Hey, tokers and tokettes, Radical Russ here to introduce you to my friend Matt and all the staff at Lush LED Lighting. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. If you thought LEDs were meet the tech of today, Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Let's just say I appear at a lot of events with the masters of indoor horticulture, and the harvests I saw from Lush LED lighting were big, tight, sticky, and very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Double your rewards and lower your expenses with Lush LED lighting. You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420radio.org. I'm Radical Russ Belville, and I want to thank you for listening to 420 Radio. We couldn't survive without you and our sponsors, and I'd like you to check out one of our prime sponsors, the National Cannabis Coalition. I've been working with NCC since June of 2012, and I'm proud to be part of the team they have assembled. National Cannabis Coalition is building the partnerships with reformers, lawmakers, and industry we need to be successful. Visit the National Cannabis Coalition website at nationalcannabiscoalition.com or the easier-to-remember ncc420.com. That's where you'll get the exclusive first look at my radical rants, as well as informative articles from the nation's top cannabis pundits. Visit ncc420.com today, and if you have your phone handy, text Russ to 420-420 to support NCC and 420 Radio. It's a free text message that helps us help you end adult marijuana prohibition. Learn more at ncc420.com, and thanks for supporting independent marijuana legalization public radio. This is your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, February 18th, 2014, brought to you by the National Cannabis Coalition. I'm Russ Belville. The Washington State House has approved a severe reduction in medical marijuana possession and cultivation limits. House Bill 2149 passed last night on a 67-29 vote and heads to the Senate. The bill would reduce the possession limit for medical marijuana patients from 24 ounces down to 3, but would allow a physician to set a higher limit in certain circumstances. The bill reduces the cultivation limit for patients from 15 plants down to 6. The bill also eliminates the collective gardens of up to 10 patients that can cultivate 45 plants and establishes a mandatory state patient registry. The bill comes in response to federal guidelines concerning the operation of the recreational marijuana industry created by Initiative 502. Regulators feared the widely unregulated medical marijuana industry would threaten the viability of the strictly regulated recreational industry, which is also subject to 25% taxation at the production, wholesale, and retail levels, in addition to state and local taxes. New York State voters overwhelmingly support medical marijuana and a majority favor legalization. That's the result from a new Quinnipiac University poll of New York voters that found 88% support for medical marijuana and 57% support for recreational marijuana legalization. While medical marijuana is a slam dunk among all demographics, recreational legalization support still lags among women, Republicans, and the elderly. Men support legalization at 63%, while women are a bare majority at 51%, a 12-point gender gap. Only 39% of Republicans and 38% of those age 65 and older support legalization. In other questions, the poll found that 81% of the people agree with the president's statement that, quote, marijuana is no more harmful than alcohol, end quote, with 36% saying marijuana is less harmful and 45% saying it is equally harmful as alcohol. A majority, 52%, now disagree that marijuana is a gateway drug leading to the use of other harder drugs. People under age 30 know those two facts well, as 70% say marijuana is safer than alcohol and 68% don't believe the gateway theory. Arizona voters may be ready to legalize recreational marijuana. A slim majority of 51% say they'd support legalization, according to a new Behavior Research Center poll, compared to 41% who were opposed. The support breaks at age 55, with less than 40% of people that age or older favoring legalization. Among people under age 35, supporters outnumber foes by a 2-to-1 margin. This February poll is almost a perfect reverse of the January poll by Scutari and CSLAC Public Relations that found 51% opposed to legalization and 43% in favor. Arizona legalized medical marijuana in 2010 by the slimmest margin ever. Just 50.13% of voters approved their medical initiative. This time around, warns Maricopa County District Attorney Bill Montgomery, quote, "We will not get caught flat-footed and late to the issue again," end quote. Montgomery also promised to work to, quote, "counter the misinformation relied upon by the Marijuana Policy Project to mislead the public about the nature and impact of drug legalization," end quote. Minnesotans aren't quite ready to legalize recreational marijuana use, but are beginning to warm up to medical marijuana. A new Star Tribune poll finds that 51% of Minnesota voters support medical marijuana legislation, with 41% opposed. Only people over age 65 don't support medical marijuana in the land of 10,000 lakes. However, 63% of Minnesotans oppose legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes, as Colorado and Washington have done, with only 30% in favor. Even among young people aged 18 to 34, a plurality of 49% oppose marijuana legalization. Surprisingly, only 26% of Minnesotans admit to having tried marijuana, compared to the 43% nationwide who admit past pot use, which seems to make a huge difference in marijuana support. Among those who have tried marijuana, 76% support medical marijuana legalization and 61% support recreational legalization. A medical marijuana bill was both introduced and killed today in the Iowa legislature. Senate File 2215 by Senator Joe Bolcom was introduced today but failed to gather any bipartisan support, as no Republicans stepped up to support the bill. The bill was referred to the Human Resources Committee for assignment, but Senator Bolcom confirmed it's dead on arrival. Advocates for the bill who had gathered at a news conference expressed their disappointment. This has been your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, February 18th, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available exclusively at the National Cannabis Coalition. Visit ncc420.com today to download. When we come back, we'll go behind the headlines, and we will be taking a look at the newest studies showing marijuana's ability to combat HIV. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. We'll be right back. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the best way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
A reefer smoking man.
Wood Pipe Smoke Shop and Speakeasy is your source for cannabis community gear in southern Wisconsin. Owners Brian and Tammy Wood are located in Kendall, just outside of Madison, and they've got everything for the smoking enthusiast, including a full assortment of pipes, water pipes, hookahs, bubblers, one-hitters, and so much more. They're open noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and can help you with your detoxification therapies as well. Call 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com for more information. That's 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com. And as always, go Pack Go.
Smoking man.
Connect with 420radio.org through social media, on Twitter @420radio.org, and our Facebook page at 420radio.org. Follow us and like us today. You'll be glad you did. Welcome back, everyone. Time for us to go behind the headlines, and there's a great headline on thinkprogress.org. Marijuana may help stop the spread of HIV, but we probably can't test the theory. And of course, this is referring to the fact that marijuana is a Schedule I drug, and because of that, it's damn near impossible to get any scientific or medical study on cannabis unless your goal is to find out how bad it is for people. In this Think Progress piece, they note the fact that there's new research suggesting that THC helps prevent the spread of the HIV virus throughout the body. Now, it's not a vaccine. It's not going to prevent you from getting HIV. They're just saying if you get HIV, it could help slow down the spread of it through your body. And they've known this from as far back as 2011 when they first presented some of these groundbreaking findings. They're down at Louisiana State University. They're led by a researcher named Dr. Patricia Molina, and they use the simian immunodeficiency virus, which is SIV. It's basically the monkey version of HIV. And they administered a daily dose of cannabis to these primates for 17 months and saw a dramatic decrease in the damage to the monkey's stomach tissue, as well as an increased population of normal cells around that damaged tissue. Now, the stomach is one of the most common areas where HIV is spread once you've gotten it. So if we have something that can help reduce the spread of HIV through the stomach, that's going to go a long way toward helping people who are infected with HIV and preventing that from spreading throughout the body and becoming full-blown AIDS. A lot of people don't understand they're two separate things. HIV is a virus that you catch, and then if you have that virus, then you may develop AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Not everybody that gets HIV develops AIDS. And if this research could lead to, preventing the spread of HIV, fewer people may develop full-blown AIDS. And this isn't the first study that's shown this, right? They go back to 2012. They found that cannabis helps fight the HIV virus in patients that are already in advanced stages of AIDS. So even if they've gone to the full-blown AIDS, THC could possibly help people. And just last year, a researcher in Philadelphia found evidence that THC helps to suppress infected cells, HIV-infected cells, from entering the brain and could help prevent and protect the brain from this toxic protein that's created by the HIV virus that leads to secondary brain injuries. I mean, they're finding all sorts of different ways that THC can help people with AIDS, help people with HIV. There's about 1.1 million people in this country who are living with HIV, but because cannabis is Schedule I, we're not going to be able to test it on them. We're not going to be able to start any, clinical trials, experimental trials, where these people could try THC and we could test and determine whether or not it's helping them. Now, instead, they've got to take all of these pharmaceutical drugs, their cocktail of HIV, immunosuppressants and so forth to be able to deal with their situation when we have this natural plant-based medication that might provide the greatest hope of all. And it's such a shame because, medical marijuana only exists because of HIV and AIDS and in its history. We've got the original glaucoma sufferer, Robert Randall, who sued to be able to use medical marijuana back in 1978. But what really, really led the development of the medical marijuana communities in Northern California, and particularly the Bay Area, was the use of medical marijuana to help people that were suffering from HIV and AIDS, to help them get their appetites back, to help them deal with the nausea from their drugs. Little did we know back then that we were also helping them to stop the spread of HIV and maybe helping them to live a longer life through the use of THC. And it was when all of these medical marijuana patients applied to the federal government to try to get onto that same program that Robert Randall got onto for his glaucoma, that's when George H.W. Bush in 1992 shut down any new entries to the Compassionate Investigative New Drug Program, essentially condemning these AIDS patients to have to use marijuana as criminals until California could pass its Compassionate Use Act in 1996. Yes, the history of medical marijuana and HIV/AIDS are inextricably linked. And this research goes to show that those people, Dennis Perone and Brownie Mary and all those people fighting in Northern California for the AIDS patients, were right all along. It's just so frustrating that we could have a system and a situation where there's a promising new drug for one of the new diseases in the world, and we're forbidden from trying it because some teenager might get high on a joint somewhere.
New drug.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back. When we come back, we're going to have our Electric Tuesday Daily Toker Tunes, Electric Bob calling in. And then at 1:30, Barry Lyons in our Reformers Reader.
He would send you South Carolina, then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight.
As marijuana goes mainstream, you need to be armed with the facts. Nobody can teach you better than Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Ph.D. You may know Dr. Mitch from his column in High Times magazine or his weekly appearance on the Russ Belville Show. Dr. Mitch is also the author of some of the best books on marijuana science, culture, history, and health, including Understanding Marijuana, Parents' Guide to Marijuana, Pot Politics, and more. Visit Amazon.com and search for Mitch Earlywine, that's EARLEYWINE, and order your books today. You can also contact Dr. Mitch by email at 420research@gmail.com.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420. You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
I'll say little red carpet, darling, your mud's too fierce. Little red carpet, you need a lover that's gonna lay.
I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm a journalist.
I'm a student.
I'm a teacher.
I'm a representative.
I have cancer.
The outdated laws of prohibition are more dangerous than the plant itself.
I lost my scholarship.
I was fired.
20 million arrests since 1965. This is getting ridiculous.
Our prisons are overcrowded with non-violent offenders.
We have the opportunity to change.
This is costing our country billions of dollars.
Making my family and I fight in a courtroom is difficult enough when I'm already fighting through chemotherapy.
There's no reason to be scared by tradition anymore.
We can stop this.
We can stop this.
We are the American people.
We can stop this.
And you have our support.
We are old,
young,
straight, gay.
We're every race and nationality.
And we're not going to give up.
You can tax it.
You can regulate it.
Apply age restrictions.
You can create millions of new jobs.
We can save our economy.
President Obama?
It's time for legalization.
Legalization.
Yes.
We
can.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Electric Tuesday, featuring the latest in electronic dance music and other cutting-edge genres. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tune.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 24 after the hour, and we got Electric Bob calling up from Arizona. How you doing, Bob?
I'm doing great, Russ. How you doing?
Oh, good. Glad to hear from you. And we had some news from Arizona today on those polls. What did you think about that?
It's good. I would love to see the state legalize where We have to. California is right next to us. Colorado is right next to us. It just makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be nice to just have the entire West Coast and all of the Western states flip over by 2016. We'll do our best to make that happen. Electric Bob's also the host of our Electric Bob's Boogaloo show with new episodes on Wednesdays at late night, 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern. What do we got coming up this week?
I got a French house mix. This is actually what this song is. It's The Phantom's Revenge. He's a DJ producer out of I forget which city in France, but he's out of France. Same as Daft Punk. They're from France. They do like house electro type of stuff. And this is some new stuff that's been coming out of there. That's he uses like a lot of like old like disco records and soul records and R&B records, and he samples like from old movies and stuff like that. All right. Well,
The title here, what is it? McClane is forced to crawl through yet another ventilation system. I suppose he's referring to, of course, John McClane from the Die Hard movies, right?
Yes, actually, there's a clip in the beginning of the song where you hear Bruce Willis playing McClane. Just he samples from that movie.
All right, I love it. And this is a French DJ you're telling us, right?
Yeah, he's out of France. I think he's my age, 25 or 26.
Wow. All right, little international music then. Let's get to it. This is The Phantom's Revenge with McClane is forced to crawl through yet another ventilation system.
How could the same shit happen to the same guy twice?
cocksucker until he tries to take off. Period. The wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Man, I can't fucking believe this.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420.
In the afternoon, if I'm home, I smoke marijuana.
You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Marijuana, yeah, yeah. I got my ganja.
Are you or is someone you know a marijuana smoker? Have you or is someone in your family been arrested for a marijuana violation? You need to know the truth about pot. NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is the most comprehensive source of information regarding marijuana and its effects on health, as well as legal issues. NORML even offers a database of lawyers specializing in cannabis in your area. NORML, the nation's largest and most successful marijuana law reform organization, has spent decades gathering the knowledge and science on everything related to cannabis. NORML is the best resource to find out the truth about marijuana, connect with a lawyer in your area, or help find an end to prohibition. Information is available at norml.org, that's NORML.org, or toll free at 888-67-NORML.
Got a comment, question, complaint, or request for 420radio.org? Visit our contact page at 420radio.org/contact today.
The best weapon you can have in the Prohibition War is your mind. Fill your head with the knowledge you need by checking out this latest entry in the Russ Belville Show's Reformer's Reader.
Welcome back, everyone. 33 after the hour, and we are joining Barry Lyons via Skype today. He is the author of Letter to a Prohibitionist. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you. You hear me fine?
I'm hearing you loud and clear. Thanks for being on the show. And I love this book. It's a nice, quick read. It's a pocket-sized Letter to a Prohibitionist, revised and updated. And I love just opening up at the very beginning your dedication to Bill Bennett, Barry McCaffrey, John Walters, and Gil Kurlikowski, none of whom seems to know what the hell they're talking about. What is that the inspiration for your book, basically, to set these guys straight?
Exactly, and that accounts for the tone that I wanted to take, too, where I just sort of blast them.
Yeah, you certainly do that. And what I also enjoyed about reading your book is right from the start, you mention your own experiences with various drugs and alcohol. And in your experience, can you tell us why marijuana is the silliest of the drugs for them to be fighting?
Well, it's the silliest because it's the least harmful. I mean, I don't want the government telling me what I should put in my body, but I mean, it's just... it's benign compared to other drugs. It's just as simple as that. Relatively benign, perhaps I should say.
You know, part of this shows in the book as well your responses that you've received from drug czars. What are some of the silliest things they tell you about marijuana in their canned responses?
No, actually, you may have misread. They didn't. None of them responded. Do you mean responded to me personally?
Yeah, just in general, their talking points that you're debunking in the book.
Oh, just, the one that drives me nuts the most. I mean, even Patrick Kennedy is saying it the other day, that marijuana has no medical benefits and that it's a fraud to even think so. As I say at the beginning, the idea that their belief that smoking dried plant matter can have any medical benefit, they find ludicrous. And of course, I find their position ludicrous.
Absolutely. And I was wondering also if you managed to see the deputy drug czar, John Botticelli, being grilled by Representatives Cohen and Blumenauer the other day in Congress.
Yes, that was fantastic. And I was a little disturbed, if that's the word, that it didn't get much press. I think the Huffington Post had something. You've talked about it, a couple of other places, but I was just surprised. It seemed to be underplayed. And Cohen really grilled him remarkably well. I thought that was pretty good.
It was a joy to watch, and it's really great to hear U.S. congressmen using some of the same lines and research that people like you and I have been spouting for 10 years now.
Right. Yep. And waiting for things to penetrate.
Absolutely. And I believe they're beginning to penetrate. In the news today, we covered a Quinnipiac poll coming out of New York State that showed 88% support for medical marijuana and something like 81% of the people believing that marijuana is not a gateway drug, and somewhere around 3 out of 4 of them thinking it's no more harmful than alcohol. What do you think it's going to take to spread that kind of thinking beyond New York and into some of the heartland states like, say, Minnesota or Iowa, where those aren't the common beliefs?
No, they aren't the common beliefs. I think, first of all, we just need to highlight more people who have used marijuana to, no ill effect. People who use it medicinally, and if we could get a bunch of Carl Sagans to check them out, and get Richard Branson. We need Richard Branson to be more forthright. We need more people speaking forthright about their personal use.
So you think that's a major reason for the change in American attitudes, is seeing people like Barack Obama become president or Michael Phelps win 20 gold medals?
Sure, that's a factor. I mean, it all really began in '96 in California, as you know, and of course, we're waiting for those reports about all the stoned drivers causing mayhem in California. I'm still waiting for these pieces.
Well, that seems to be a new avenue of attack from the prohibitionists. We're hearing them responding to studies showing a tripling in marijuana being found in the blood of fatality drivers. So in your book, Letter to a Prohibitionist, are you covering some of those driving statistics and some of those scares about driving?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I hit the point that you have hit many times. Which is that the presence of metabolites is not an indication that you are impaired. It's an indication of it shows a history of smoking marijuana, but it doesn't say anything about your status right now.
That's absolutely correct. Letter to a Prohibitionist is the book, and looking through the book, it's well cited as well. When you look in the back of the book, you're going to find all the footnotes from all the different pages and a great list of hyperlinks in here to give you that information you need to fight these prohibitionists. I would recommend this as a great tome for you to get your basic education on how to write, letters to the editor, how to respond to your elected officials when they say something dumb about marijuana and its legalization. And we're speaking to Barry Lyons, who is the author of the book. And how has the book sales been going for you? Have you been promoting it at events and such?
The book sales have been okay. Not as strong as I would like, but I think it also has something to do with this genre of war on drug books, which sometimes can be a pretty difficult sell with the mainstream public.
Yeah, I think more of them are starting to come around, and especially when they see more of these highlights of people like Botticelli and the DEA administrator Lenhart being unable to answer simple questions like, is methamphetamine more dangerous than marijuana? Is heroin more dangerous?
Yeah, Leonhardt, it was just unbelievable. I mean, these people are really pros about dodging the obvious question. can you put marijuana on the same level as heroin? And they will not answer.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. And I was reading some information, I believe it was in Forbes magazine or Forbes Online. Jacob Solomon was writing about the possibility of rescheduling for marijuana happening. And there's a new bill out as well. I believe it's Senator Cohen's bill, Unmuzzle the Drug Czar, which would take away the requirement that the drug czar opposes the legalization of all Schedule I drugs.
Yeah.
What do you think the chances are for these political changes, either rescheduling or unmuzzling the drug czar?
The unmuzzling of the drug czar, this new development is fantastic. But it's a little disconcerting when you see the president recently mention that he wants to throw it to Congress about rescheduling. And as you know, he doesn't have to do that. He can do that. And I think it was Jake Tapper the other day, I forget who spoke to him about this. And I wish someone in the near future would be a little bit more pointed and say, Mr. President, you do know that you can reschedule marijuana. It doesn't have to be Congress.
Yeah, somebody needs to present that to him directly, because given his statement that he believes marijuana is no more harmful than alcohol, then it's just cruel and unusual to sit there and not reschedule it if you have the power.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Barry, I was just going to say there's a new development, somewhat new development in our fighting for the legalization of marijuana, and that comes from last summer's Sanjay Gupta documentary on the high CBD oil treatments that has led some legislators to introduce bills that only legalize high CBD oil. What do you think of this new medical development, and how does it augur for future medical marijuana?
I get mixed feelings. I mean, on the one hand, any new medical insights are great, but I don't want to see marijuana as cannabis as the plant scapegoated, because we need the pharmaceutical companies to come in and develop synthetic or quasi-synthetic medicines. I'm just a little nervous that it's possible we might go down that road. In other words, the idea that if marijuana is legal across the board for medical use, then recreational users will be arrested for breaking medical/pharmaceutical laws. Mm-hmm. Or pharmaceutical laws is not quite how I meant to put it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. People can be busted for illegally holding a Schedule 3 oxy pill or a Schedule 3 Vicodin pill. Vicodin is perfectly legal if you got a prescription, but if you don't, well, there's some serious penalties.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that you cannot prescribe cannabis. You can recommend it. You can't prescribe a plant that grows wild in nature. So they're always going to be coming up against that. But the development with the oil, on the face of it, that's good news. I just don't want to stay on this path where it's medical use only. It's got to be legalized across the board for all adults.
Completely agreed. And, what I see coming from medical use only is a development that leads toward these pharmaceutical preparations, which I'm all for if we could get a pill or a spray that helps someone with epilepsy or cancer or whatever, but let's not lose our access to the whole plant.
Oh, yeah. No, it's great. If there are people who don't want to eat it, who don't want to smoke it, that's fine. If they want to use a pill, something, better than Marinol, that's fantastic. But let's not use it to continue to criminalize the plant.
Yeah, folks, Letter to a Prohibitionist is the book, and as far as tearing down all of the rhetoric and the talking points that you hear from the Drug Czar's office, the DEA, NIDA, this is a great tome for you to get that. All sorts of links, hyperlinks, footnotes, reference information in the back, give you all the information you need to make the best letter to the editor or presentation or whatever you need to do. Barry Lyons is the author. And Barry, do you have a website or Facebook where people can get a hold of you, maybe get a hold of the book?
You can get it at Amazon, and you can reach me through Twitter at LyonsNYC, LYONSNYC.
Excellent. And before we let you go, any last words about the book or prohibition in general you'd like to part our audience with?
Yeah, well, I did want to say that when I originally started writing the book, I wrote it in a more staid, if you will, academic tone, which wasn't working for me. And I just want to let prospective readers know that the book is often funny. I think of it as a cross between, Bill Maher and Sam Harris. I wanted to write a very accessible, almost a beach read, if you will, something that doesn't hit you over the head with too much dry prose. And I think it's very enjoyable and frankly unique on that front.
All right. Well, thank you for writing it. And it is a very good read, Letter to a Prohibitionist by Barry Lyons in our Reformers Reader. Thanks for being on our show, Barry.
Thank you, Russ. Thanks for having me.
All right. When we come back, we'll have time for a radical rant. There's a story on NBC News, Treatment or Jail, and it pretty much sums up the kinder, gentler drug warriors of Project Sam. Incredible quotes by Patrick Kennedy and Kevin Sabet when we come back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Ever wonder how often to change your bong water? The most effective method for baking pot brownies? The best destinations for a ganja getaway? How to hide herb in your car? Whether to grow your own? How precisely to legalize it? Or how something as wonderful as marijuana ever got to be illegal in the first place? Finally, you can find all these answers and much more in the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook, featuring 420 things to do when you're stoned. Since 1974, High Times magazine has covered marijuana in all its aspects and wonders, from cultivation to legalization to the herb's enduring and exalted place in popular culture. Packed with inside information, the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook rolls all of this collected wisdom together into a single indispensable ganja guide, including an entertaining look at marijuana's history, profiles of herb-friendly travel destinations and festivals, favorite potluck recipes from the High Times staff, smoking skills, advocacy and activism, essential marijuana movies and songs, profiles of famous cannabis strains, comprehensive growing information, celebrity endorsements, and much more. This is truly, finally, the ultimate guide to green living.
420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana.
This is the brain activity of a normal 14-year-old. This is the brain activity of a 14-year-old after smoking marijuana. If you use pot, you're not using your brain.
Sir, do you think there will or should come a time for us to discuss the possibility of legalization, regulation, and control of all drugs, thereby doing away with the violent criminal market as well as a major source of funding for international terrorism? Thank you so much for your time, Mr. President.
Well, I think this is an entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Name the time and place, Mr. President. Radical Russ has been prepping for this debate full-time since 2005. The Russ Belville Show.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant.
Tony Dokapil, and pardon me if I get the pronunciation incorrect there, Dokupil perhaps, of NBC News, has written the best mainstream news piece I've ever read on the Kevin Sabet misnamed Project Sam, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Now, folks is on the co-founder, former Rhode Island congressman and cocaine, alcohol, and OxyContin addict Patrick Kennedy, and the piece is entitled Treatment or Jail? Patrick Kennedy wages fierce anti-pot crusade. Dokapil succeeds in getting Kennedy and Sabet to reveal their intentions so openly that they sabotage their credibility with any reader even slightly informed on the drug war. Dokapil writes, Kennedy believes there is, quote, an epidemic in this country of epic dimensions when it comes to alcohol and drugs, end quote. He'd like to treat it all, but he's convinced that the single biggest threat to America's mental health is free market marijuana. Yeah. Well, look, we now have a majority in this country that knows marijuana is safer than alcohol. The president even thinks marijuana is no more harmful than alcohol. And besides alcohol, many Americans have seen the effects of crack, meth, heroin, and prescription painkiller abuse with their own two eyes. But marijuana is the biggest threat? Kennedy then tells Dokapil, quote, marijuana takes you to the same place as cocaine or heroin. It just takes longer, end quote. So, then marijuana is less harmful, no? and if that place is death by overdose, if that place is body-racking withdrawals, if that place is intense cravings, then no, marijuana does not take you to the same place. Now, if that place is the black market drug dealer, then your statement kind of makes sense, Mr. Kennedy. Dokapil also describes the Project Sam platform of decriminalization for simple possession with mandatory screening for marijuana addiction, regular use, and mandatory marijuana education, scare propaganda, and a year in a probation program, regular P-tests, which, if failed, lead to jail. Kennedy explains, quote, incarceration is a powerful motivator. That does it for a lot of people. That's the turning point, hearing that judge say, treatment or jail, end quote. Well, yeah, remarkable how P-tests back with the threat of jail force pot smokers to quit. Why, it's almost as if that addiction is fairly easy to break, huh? And considering how many pot smokers there are, their ease at breaking their marijuana addiction must do wonders for the drug court and rehab success statistics when it comes time to apply for that next funding grant. But you know me, folks, I don't take anybody at their word on this stuff. I look shit up. So, in the government's treatment episode data set admissions for 2011, which is a database that represents all admissions to rehabs that receive public funds, and in some states, privately funded rehabs report to it as well. TEDS-A, as it's called, tracked 1.8 million of the nation's 2.6 million people in drug rehab. Now, of those 1.8 million, 700,000 rehabbers had used marijuana, and 1.1 million rehabbers had not used marijuana. So, about 2/5 of all rehabbers had smoked pot. Now, that's of the TEDS-A data. We don't know about the other 800,000 that are in the private data sector, but I have no reason to believe the numbers would be vastly different. So at least we're going to go with it. 2/5 of all rehabbers have smoked pot. Furthermore, 143,000 of those 700,000 marijuana rehabbers, about 1 out of 5 people in rehab for marijuana, only smoked pot. They weren't flagged for any other drugs or alcohol, just pot. And another 230,000 of them used marijuana and alcohol, but no other drugs. So that makes pot-only rehabbers about 8%, and pot and alcohol rehabbers about 21% of the total rehabbers. And when we look at those 8% who are the pot-only rehabbers, about 1/3 are weekend tokers, and over 1/3 didn't even smoke pot the month before rehab. That shows you just how darn addicted they were when they were sentenced. Now, here's a comparison of how they ended up in rehab. Criminal justice system referrals, like a drug court or a DUI that forces you into rehab. Well, 44% of the time you're there because of the criminal justice system if pot was one of your drugs, but only 28% of the time if pot was not one of your drugs. And if you only smoked pot, 53% of the referrals to rehab are from the criminal justice system. That's right, a majority of people in rehab for pot only were forced there by a drug court. But that's only 33%, 1/3, if you only used a drug or alcohol, just one drug or alcohol. How about school, employer, and community referrals? right? Like your school, you fail a school drug test, or you fail an employment drug test, community referrals, whatever. Well, it's an 18% if pot was one of your drugs, but 12% if pot was not one of your drugs. 25% of the time you're referred by your school, employer, or community if you only smoked pot, but only 11% if you used a drug or alcohol. How about healthcare providers? You know, you would think healthcare providers would know who are the people who are addicted that need treatment and who are the people that aren't addicted that don't need treatment. Well, in that case, only 13% of the time does a healthcare provider send a pot smoker to rehab, but 19% of the time if they're using alcohol or other drugs. If it's only pot, only 7% of the time does a healthcare provider send a person who uses only pot to rehab. 17% of the time if they're a drug or alcohol user. And then finally, self-referrals, which is like, I decided I had a problem, so I'm going to turn myself into rehab. 25% of the time if pot was one of your drugs, but 42% of the time if it was some other drug or alcohol. And 14% of the time if you only smoked pot, but 39% of the time if you only used a drug or alcohol. So let me summarize all these percentages I've been throwing at you. If you smoke pot, you're more likely to be forced into a rehab by a court than people who use drugs and alcohol, who are almost 3 times as likely to admit themselves to rehab than pot smokers. Employers, schools, and community are 3 times more likely to refer a pot smoker to rehab than medical professionals. And when marijuana is legal, rehabs lose almost 4 sentenced pot smokers for every 1 self-admitted pot smoker. So now you know who Patrick Kennedy is fighting his anti-pot crusade for, the drug testing and rehab industries. But folks, it gets worse. The article goes on and quotes Kevin Sabet. And I've been following Sabet since I debated him in 2012. And of course, the glaring flaw in their treatment or jail approach to marijuana, I mean, you know, aside from presuming any marijuana smoker caught by police is an addict in need of forced rehab, the glaring flaw is the lack of any policies to deal with the black market. Now, lately, Kevin Sabet has unveiled a new talking point to deal with that flaw. The black market just doesn't matter. Quote, I think Madison Avenue has proven that it can get around more rules and be more ruthless than any Mexican drug cartel, end quote, says Sabet, who explains that the black market is, quote, better than having Joe Pot heir to Joe Camel on a bus stop where I'm going to be hanging out with my kids before school, end quote. I'm almost speechless. Can any of you recall a single advertising agency in America that has ever tortured people with drills and bleach, beheaded them, and then dumped their heads and bodies on the freeway during morning rush hour? I mean, I know the guys on Mad Men make some hefty salaries, but I don't ever recall Don Draper dunking rival ad execs in vats of acid, bribing police and government officials, and decorating his bachelor pad with gold-plated AK-47 rifles, M60 machine guns, and a rare white tiger in a plexiglass cage. Oh, but you know, those are just dead Mexicans, you see. As Tony Docapil writes, quote, Sabet and Kennedy say the black market in marijuana is mostly nonviolent on the American side and will create fewer public health problems than allowing advertisers to flog for big marijuana. End quote. So, as long as we're forced to import marijuana from Mexico, costing the lives of tens of thousands across the border and risking the destabilization of an entire country, as long as we grow marijuana in closets and attics and basements, risking home invasions and imprisonment, as long as we sell marijuana at inflated prices that provide no benefit to the tax base, risking violent encounters with police and imprisonment, and as long as we use marijuana in private, risking tickets, fines, mandatory rehabs, P-tests, and potentially imprisonment if we're caught, all that would be better than a bus stop ad for a legal marijuana product sold in an adults-only store that checks ID. And by the way, the last time anybody ever saw a bus stop ad for Joe Camel, President Clinton was defending himself from impeachment over a Hummer, and people hadn't yet started worrying about the Y2K bug. These guys are going out in flames. All they got to do is keep telling the truth about themselves. That's all the time we got. We'll take it into hour 2 For Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it,